Hey, what's up, audience? It's Drone Thrust, also known as Controversial Quotes. Uh, I am going to have a discussion about Donald Trump. Donald Trump has changed his mind on Ukraine, as I strongly urged him to do in previous broadcast. He's now sending them more weapons and threatening to put tariffs on Russia's trading partners. Russia is. Do I like Batman? Yeah, I like Batman. I was in Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight Rises as an extra. I didn't make the final cut, but yes. So yeah, Trump is sending some assistance to Ukraine. There's rumors that uh, Melania encouraged him to send. Melania might have encouraged Trump to get more involved in the Ukrainian Russia conflict. She's from Eastern Europe, and I think that she hates Putin more than Trump does. Yeah, so Trump had a phone conversation with Putin, and then the next day, Putin launched a volley of missiles and drones into Kyiv. That made Trump look like a fool. I think Trump is realizing now that Putin embarrassed him, and his poll numbers took a hit as he stopped supporting Ukraine. Uh, in my opinion, most Americans support sending weapons to Ukraine, no matter how long the war drags on. In other news, and I'm sure we're going to get back to the UKR conflict later on in this telecast. Trump is suing the Wall Street Journal. He is claiming that they defamed him in an article they wrote about Epstein. They're saying that Trump sent Epstein a drawing of a woman, posed provocatively. I think Trump is saying that he doesn't do drawings, but in fact, many of Trump's sketches were sold at auction. There's plenty. If you look on the Drudge Report, you're going to see that Trump indeed is a sketcher. I mean, he sketches pretty well, actually. I could not do the types of sketches he does, and he has a distinct style of sketching. I believe that an art expert will be able to look at the drawing that the Wall Street Journal has and determine if it's him or not. So, for Trump to sue the Wall Street Journal in an attempt to get defamation money, for me, that he's making a big mistake, because I don't think that the Wall Street Journal defamed him. He probably did send that photograph to Epstein. I mean, I'm not an expert on the Epstein scandal, but it does seem that Epstein had a lot of famous followers. He knew Stephen Hawking, obviously Bill Gates. A lot of celebrities were on the flight logs to his island. I don't understand how celebrities I don't want to name anyone in particular, but I don't understand why celebrities' names would be on a flight log to Epstein Island, if they were not patronizing him. Um, I mean, it seems to me like there's a lot we'll never know about the Epstein scandal. It's very unfortunate that he was able to commit suicide or was killed in jail. I don't really know. I don't have a gut feeling as to if he was murdered or hanged himself in prison. But I mean, it seems to me like the only one who really knows the full details of the scandal is Ghislaine Maxwell, and she is not talking. Okay, so what else is in the news? AI. And this is Trump related. I mean, Donald Trump has got to realize that putting tariffs on companies is going to force them to eliminate HR workers with AI chatbots, and that is what we're seeing in the news. Companies, in a bid to get more efficient, that's how they describe the process. They say, IBM will say, we're becoming more efficient by laying off 20% of the human resources staff and replacing them with chatbots. I know a woman who works in the worked in the pharmacy coding field. She told me that throughout over the last like year and a half, she worked at a place for like 5 years and told me that she's been working with a chatbot for the last 2 years, and she recently lost her job. I mean, I think the chatbot, I think the company realized that the chatbot could do her job for her. When you see Democrats clamoring to raise the minimum wage to $25 an hour now because 15 wasn't enough. When you see Retrumplicans urging tariffs on all imported goods and even movies, you get a scenario wherein companies are going to have to find a way to make even more, make enough money to overcome the higher taxation. And it seems to me like what companies are going to do in the future is replace the human resource department with a big chatbot. And now they say that a chatbot can only do 90% of what a human resource worker can do. They say that you still need a human touch, and that makes sense. I think that like if I were going to run a company, Drone Thrust, as I own the website, I own that website domain. I want to build it into a company. I would have to have some human resource workers. I assume that I would have to have a greeter at the door just for security reasons. I wouldn't want some, maniac to come into the office and tear it apart. But the potential for AI to replace white collar jobs is shocking. Now, I would argue actually that it's a good thing. I believe that if people can work, if they could get hired, working for IBM, they could easily get hired working at a firm that's going to pay them more money. I mean, I would love it if my resume said that I worked in the human resource department at IBM, because then I could transfer to a company that would pay me more money. Like I would be able to maybe sell real estate, for Compass, and because I have that IBM pedigree, I'd be able to generate tens of thousands of dollars extra per month. I think that sometimes working for a big corporation can hold you back. I think that you need to start your own company if you, at the end of the day, innovate, eliminating jobs with technology will probably cause more innovation and more growth. I think that the biggest problem, in America is that a few corporations, monopolize the talent base. So if you work for Apple, Nvidia or IBM, and you get replaced by a chatbot, you could start your own tech startup. You could start a hedge fund, a private equity fund, a brand like I am with Drone Thrust. All right. So, what else is in the news regarding Trump? His ICE raids are very unpopular all over the city. All over the cities. People don't like ICE. Um, you know, immigration is just not something that I have an opinion about, really. There are cases wherein, I mean, I believe that if a criminal is in the country and that criminal committed crimes here, then he ought to spend time in jail here. I would not send a criminal back to a country that doesn't have a justice system. I mean, I believe firmly that criminals should stay in jail. That's why I'm not a Democrat. I mean, Democrats are opposed to the jail system. They say it doesn't rehabilitate, it just punishes. I think that that's the only solution you have when it comes to the issue of criminality in America. I mean, the criminality, and as I say, why I'm a Republican is I just can't stand people, these socialists like Zorhan Mandani, who will say things like the jail system should be closed because it has no purpose. You know, it does serve a purpose. The jail system should be expanded. There aren't too few criminals on the streets. There are too many. Look at Chicago violence statistics. I'm gonna look on my computer to see how many people were affected by gun violence in Chicago. I'll be right back. I'm just taking a second. I'm gonna Google Chicago gun violence. All right, so this weekend, all right, so 2 days ago, the news is that in Chicago, 28 people were shot. Six of them were shot fatally. That statistic is accurate. It's not me propagating false information. That statistic shows that we need more cops on the streets, and we need to throw the criminals in jail, no matter how unpopular that is. You know, on this channel, I complain about both Democrats and Republicans. I mean, I tend to criticize Republicans a lot because I think that there are people who should get thrown out of the party that are a bunch of grifters. But when you see statistics that say that 28 shot, six fatally in Chicago over the weekend, that's evidence that we need a tougher jail system. I mean, the problem isn't that we're not giving every potential shooter a basic income. The problem is that we need cops to scan people with metal detectors out there, scanning people to make sure that they don't have guns. You know, I think that my next the next cause I'm going to talk about a lot on this channel is that we need militarization of police. That term has a lot of negative baggage attached to it, but I believe that all people in Chicago should have to walk through metal detectors every time they walk out of their house, and if they have a gun, I think that the gun definitely needs to be confiscated. You know, I, I, I'm skeptical. I'm skeptical about so-called gun control laws. I don't believe it's possible to prevent gun violence through preventing people from buying guns. Unfortunately, they say that with the scenario in America is that there are like hundreds of millions of guns all over. People like their guns. They want to keep them. I don't believe that it's prudent to pass laws banning guns and enforcing people to turn them in because they won't. So I definitely, and that's unfortunate. I mean, I wish the Second Amendment didn't exist. Actually, I think that was the biggest mistake the founding fathers ever made because it created a scenario wherein American society will always be saturated with guns and overwhelmed with gun violence. I mean, I tend to treat issues. I look at issues in terms of statistics and mathematics, and you know, it's obvious that if the government were to if it's obvious to me that if there, if the government tried to confiscate people's guns in mass, that social experiment wouldn't work. So, yeah, I think in areas where there are like 28 people shot over the weekend, the answer is to send in the National Guard with metal detectors and scan everybody for guns and make sure that the people aren't taking out their anger on their neighbors. I heard that a lot of gun violence in Chicago is caused actually by social media. It's not really caused by gangs. That I've saw, a statistic. Do I support Israel? That's a complex issue. You know, I, I would say that I support Israel's defense of the Druze in Syria. I absolutely think that it's good that Israel is preventing the new government from butchering the Jews with butchering the Druze. Yeah, yeah. They're in Syria. It seems like the uh, the government is trying to kill the Druze, and Israel is standing in the way of that, and I support Israel's stance there. The situation in Gaza is, I think, appalling. I do not believe that it was legal for Israel to destroy all of the buildings in Gaza as a response to the horrendous October 7th massacre. Um, I believe that during October 7th, Hamas instigated what can be described as a genocidal massacre and kidnapping campaign against Israelis. I believe that Israel was left with no good options on October 8th, but I cannot condone the destruction of all of the buildings in Gaza. That's, for me, I actually think it is a war crime. I'm reasonably pro-Israel. It's difficult, though, to say that, I support everything the Israeli government does, because I don't. I don't know how I would deal with the Palestinians if I were in charge of it, if I were advising the Israeli government. The Palestinians are constantly trying to kidnap and murder Israelis, it seems. And I think that putting up a wall what was a necessary uh, action for Israel to take. It's a very complex issue. I mean, I would just hope that cooler heads will prevail in the future and you could have peace. I mean, I'm apprehensive about Trump's plan to send like millions of Palestinians to places like Libya and Indonesia. That does qualify as ethnic cleansing. I don't want to come off as demonizing the Israeli government, because that just plays into the hands of people that I don't like. I mean, I'm not an anti-Semite. I mean, I just hope that I wish that the situation. I wish that the Palestinians would return all the hostages, and that the war could end. Obviously, with all of the buildings destroyed in Gaza, like all of the buildings are essentially destroyed, and the people are living in rubble. It's going to take 40 years to clear the rubble in Gaza. I think that I don't know how to solve that issue. I would not. If it's unfortunate that nobody prevented, Netanyahu from destroying all the buildings in Gaza, just as it's unfortunate that the Palestinians decided to engage in a kidnapping and massacre campaign against the Israelis. There's no easy solution. There never was. Even the famous Israeli author Amos Oz characterized the Israeli Palestinian conflict as a fight between two goods. And he said both parties, the Israelis and the Palestinians, can accurately claim to be entitled to control all of the Holy Land. And I believe actually that that's true. Um, Israel is surrounded by tyrants, except for the Jordanians. I would characterize the Egyptians and the Syrians, and obviously the Hezbollah occupied part of Lebanon as being governed by tyrants that just want to kill. I mean, look how if people are going to defend Hezbollah as being a legitimate resistance, do you think it was okay for Hezbollah to help the Assad government kill 500,000 of the opponents of Assad? I found it interesting that the Arabs lost faith in Hassan Nasrallah when it turned out that he supported Assad's brutal civil war against the opposition. So, in terms of the Israeli Palestinian conflict, I think it's a problem without a solution. And it's the historicity of the conflict. Yeah, but both sides have shared grievances against each other, and there's no way of solving that issue, in my opinion. I try to be even-handed on it. I find that both sides say things that I disagree with a lot. I mean, I can't say that I support the types of governments that the Arab world has. I mean, the Arab world is filled with dictators. Now, in some cases, it's best for the United States and Israel for there to be a dictator. Spreading democracy, as Michael Scheuer said, throughout the Middle East would not benefit the US and Israel, as they're two very unpopular factions to the Arabs. I mean, if you were to have a democracy in Saudi Arabia, you would get something that looks a lot like Hamas, I'm sure. If you study how MBS handles opposition, he puts them in jail or kills them. Yeah, in the Middle East, I believe that because the Middle East is governed by dictators, that because of that, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict will go on forever. It's the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is like a cold. I think you call it like a cold, a static conflict. You're going to find that both sides just launch weapons at each other without ever really invading. There's a term for that. It's like what Russia did with Ukraine before the full-scale invasion. It was a frozen conflict. Yes, that's what I believe. I believe that the only state that can exist between the Israelis and the Palestinians is a frozen conflict that has no solution. I don't know how to advocate what the borders of a potential Palestinian state should be, because it seems like land for peace doesn't work, and it seems a lot to me like the Palestinians just want to drive the Israelis into the sea. Yeah, so now Trump is uh, getting frustrated with Netanyahu. He says he's trigger happy. The Pope ratcheted up criticism of Israel. He said that there was an episode where some like 70 Palestinians were waiting for food assistance, but they got bombed by the Israelis, and the Pope called that a barbarity. Yes, it's unfortunate, but I mean, if you look at how the Palestinians treat like their LGBTQ population, you could say that that's a barbarity also. I mean, the Middle East is filled with tyrants, and to constantly point the finger at Israel is somewhat hypocritical. I mean, we could say that, as Michael Scheuer said, it's not a stretch of the imagination to call the Saudi royal family tyrants. It's easy to, and anybody could say that. You could look at look at beheadings in Saudi Arabia. Look how people in Iran get hanged and thrown into brutal prisons. You could see that there's tyranny all over the Middle East. I mean, the only country uh, in the Middle East that has a democracy is Iraq, and you know, Iraq has a democracy because the United States insisted after 9/11. All right, so what else is in the news? Let's talk about let's talk about religion. So a lot of Christians in the United States support Israel because of Christian Zionism. They believe that the conflict in the Middle East is actually a good thing because it means that Jesus Christ will come soon in the future. The Christians believe that the rapture of the church will take them to heaven as the conflict in the Middle East gets even worse. Pastor John Hagee is a big supporter of Israel. Netanyahu even went to his office at his church. I mean, John Hagee, if you look at his sermons, you're going to find that he explicitly states that the conflict in the Middle East will bring about the second coming of Jesus, which will be preceded by the rapture of the church. John Hagee believes that it's the underlying theory behind the rapture, I believe, is dispensationalism. It's something that most Christians reject. I mean, the Catholic Church does not support the notion of a rapture. Within the Protestant denominations, the notion of a rapture is hotly debated. Not all Protestants believe that born again Christians are going to be sucked up into the sky to meet Jesus in the clouds, but some do. And I've listened to Pastor Hagee's justification for his belief in the rapture, and I think that he can cite scripture that points to his belief in the rapture. I'm a Catholic. I understand. I understand a little bit about those verses. I don't think it's going to happen. Just FYI. But you're going to find that if you look at sermons on YouTube, that the Protestants are heavily invested in the theory that the rapture of the church is coming soon. They even believe that if an evangelical Christian is flying a helicopter and the rapture happens, that the helicopter is going to spin to the earth and crash with everybody in it. They believe that the conflict in the Middle East will be resolved by a demon possessed tyrant called the Antichrist. John Hagee called him the son of Satan, and who this son of Satan is going to claim to be the Messiah, and he's going to demand that people worship him and have the number 666 tattooed on them. They believe that only people who have the mark of the beast will be able to buy or sell. The Left Behind books deal with people who are left in the post-rapture days who refuse to get 666 tattooed. The only way for people who are left behind, according to rapture believers, after the rapture to be saved is to not accept the mark of the beast. Hagee certainly believes that the third temple will be rebuilt. I mean, and if you listen to Hagee's sermons, you see that he thinks that the third temple will be taken over by the demon possessed Antichrist, and that the demon possessed Antichrist will then start a war, a global conflagration, and kill like 2/3 of the population. That's when Hagee predicts that when the Antichrist rebuilds the third temple and kills 2/3 of the world's population, Hagee predicts that Jesus is going to come in and raise hell, so to speak. I mean, so yes, Israel indeed does receive a lot of funding from Christian Zionists. Um, you know, my problem, one problem that I'm noticing on YouTube is that people who give rebuttals to Christian Zionists are just too anti-Israel that they don't know how to view the issue in all of its complexity. To quote Tom Cruise, that's a Tom Cruise term. Uh, the anti-Christian Zionists are just too pro-Palestinian for me. I don't. I guess I would say that I don't really like either of them because when I see that the people who complain about the Christian Zionism, as some woman influencer did, she was just too anti-Israel and didn't view the Israeli-Palestinian conflict as having any complexity. She just thought that it was all Israel's fault, and I don't agree that it's all of anybody's fault. All right, so what else is going on YouTube in the world of religion? Aaron Smith Levin, growing up in Scientology, has an interesting channel. Aaron Smith Levin was in Scientology for a long time and he quit, and he publishes anti Scientology stuff all the time. And I would recommend watching his re upload of the David Miscavige interview. He, Aaron Smith Levin, has the only, he's one of the channels that has the David Miscavige interview in its entirety. Um, that channel was aired on ABC. In that video, the current leader of Scientology, who never has his picture taken publicly, had decided it was a good idea to debate Scientology's principles with Ted Koppel. And I would describe that as being one of the most fascinating moments in TV history. People, I'm surprised that the David Miscavige Koppel interview just is not seen more times on the media because it is a shocking peek into the secretive world of Scientology. You're going to find that Miscavige he's an extremely articulate fellow. He he's good at he was good at promoting a version of Scientology that was very extreme. In the interview, Miscavige gave off a bunch of CCHR talking points about psychiatry. If you were, if I were to say what, if David Miscavige gave that interview today, um, and said things about Scientology that were so outrageous, there would be more. It would get more airplay. I really think that, like, if any of you guys know Ben Shapiro, you should tell him to upload clips of the David Miscavige interview and give his opinion on them. I mean, Miscavige made so many claims about Scientology that were fake, that were fraudulent. I mean, he made claims that, like, psychiatry, was, you know, a conspiracy. I mean, it's hard for me to describe quickly how many outrageous claims he made against psychology and psychiatry. That's my point. He made misleading comments about L. Ron Hubbard. It was a classic uh, interview from the 1990s. The 1990s were uh, a it w- they were a fascinating decade to be born. During the 1990s, people would go on TV and make outrageous comments with impunity because there was no social media to recirculate the comments on green screen clips the way I do. Look at Tom Cruise's interview with Larry King. I have posted on my other channel. Um, It's a fascinating what Tom Cruise said about Scientology in the other channel at Drone Thrust. I posted that there. You're going to find that Tom Cruise was a completely different Tom Cruise than you see now. Now Tom Cruise never does an interview that is not scripted. Every interview Tom Cruise sits down for in the year 2025 is controlled. The interviewer is told that they're forbidden to ask any questions about Scientology. Things were different back when Cruise was promoting The Last Samurai on Larry King. I have that interview posted on at Drone Thrust YouTube. It has 20,000 views. I want to spike the viewership of that video up to like 1 million views because I would like Tom Cruise to answer the question, do you agree with what you said back then? Now, Tom Cruise doesn't talk about Scientology at all. And I'm trying to force the issue. I mean, I want to know if he still believes in, CCHR and Narcanon. I want to know what his opinion on it. I mean, in the past, Cruz said that Narcanon could get people off drugs. During Narcanon, well, what you do is you take ridiculous amounts of vitamins and sit in a sauna. There's no evidence that sitting in a sauna and taking vitamins will get you off drugs. But that doesn't stop Tom Cruise from making that false claim. It didn't stop him from making that false claims in the past. Now, Tom Cruise recently he's experiencing a career. Tom Cruise is experiencing a career renaissance. He he had a hit movies in Top Gun and The Final Mission Impossible. He has a new love interest in the form of I forgot her name, but yeah, he's dating someone now. The star of Ballerina. I don't know. I can't recall her name off the top of my head. And Katie Holmes even liked a picture of the dating news on Instagram. Oh, he's dating Anna de Armas. That's her name. And Katie Holmes made the mistake of publicly liking the news. So yeah, Katie Holmes is happy that Tom Cruise has found love once again. Um, I mean, I guess Katie Holmes doesn't have a problem with Anna de Armas becoming a Scientologist. I mean, it seems to me like Tom Cruise will try to get Anna de Armas to become the face of Scientology. I mean, I definitely think that if they have kids, that Cruz will make Anna de Armas go through a silent birth. The kid is going to learn a lot of study technology. It seems to me like all Scientology kids, are indoctrinated into the cause from, a young age. And now you see that there are mass demonstrations outside of Scientology churches. Even people with monetized people with like over 1,000 followers on YouTube can live stream their protests at Scientology churches. I mean, I'm not sure I support that. For me, it's kind of tasteless to picket outside of a religious organization, even if I disagree with it. I tend to say that, the best way of dealing with Scientologists is to release internet videos of it, and hopefully they'll see the video on the internet and quit. I think that if you protest outside of a Scientology church, you run the risk of alienating people. I mean, it makes you look like a bigot. The protests outside of the Scientology churches have become violent. I mean, Aaron Smith Levin was attacked by a maniac who used his dog to try to rip him to shreds. I mean, if you look at the video, you're going to see that Aaron Smith Levin went to the Scientology org in California, and some lunatic used his dog to attack him. I mean, they're very risky places to protest. I've seen videos of church members attacking people. There was an incident in Colorado where a Scientology church member attacked a protester. It's a fascinating scandal. The cause of online, anti-Scientology has ballooned in popularity as social media has become more ubiquitous. There was always clips of the David Miscavige interview on YouTube, but now that YouTube has become the dominant form of entertainment, I think YouTube is eclipsing regular TV. You're seeing that influencers are able to gain monetized channels uh, just by complaining about Scientology. That for me is shocking. I never, when I was in college, there was a website called Xenu.net, and it had embarrassing audio clips of L. Ron Hubbard, and the audio clips that they had were very shocking. Hubbard made a lot of outrage, controversial quotes, as I would say. Go to Xenu.net in the Hubbard audio archive. Okay, so do you want to get back to Trump and taxes? All right, so let's. Well, actually, I found another cult I thought of. We're going to do one more cult. This cult is located in upstate New York. It was founded by a man named Alex Gray. It's called COSM, COSM. Alex Gray claimed that he received the divine revelation when he was on an acid trip, LSD. He claimed that when he took LSD, his soul was raptured into the heavens and he was given a divine revelation. He built a huge building in upstate New York that looks very bizarre. Um, Alex Gray does a lot of paintings. His paintings are thoroughly weird. There's the paintings contain like a lot of nudity. I think that his paintings are all ugly, actually. But he has a huge following in upstate New York. And he built a very weird looking building called the Entheon. It has like a lot of Buddhist statues combined with all sorts of weird things. I mean, I'm not sure what his belief system is, but yeah, if you go to Cosm on YouTube, you're going to find that. Um, I think you'll find that Alex Gray is like another version. He's trying to do what L. Ron Hubbard did. I mean, Alex Gray is more open about it. He stated that he admitted to being influenced by Aleister Crowley. Scientology hides the fact that Hubbard was heavily influenced by Aleister Crowley, but Alex Gray, I've seen in interviews, he's unabashed about his about how Aleister Crowley had a positive impact on his life. You know, I mean, I think Aleister Crowley. Yeah, I don't know a lot about him, but he's correctly described, I believe, on Wikipedia as an occultist. And Crowley definitely influenced Hubbard. If you look up what Hubbard said about Crowley, you would see that Hubbard, copied off of him, but was much more successful at it. Yeah, so we have another cult on YouTube. All right, so Trump and taxes. I think that Trump's presidency will. I don't. Trump has some type of physical ailment wherein his limbs are swollen. I think he might actually quit the presidency because of his ailment. I don't know that at his age, if it would be good for him to continue with a swollen limbs condition. Yeah, I'm not familiar with the condition, but it looks pretty bad from what I've seen. I mean, I've seen close ups of Trump's foot where it seems like it's bloated and out of shape. So I'm predicting actually that he's going to quit because of the condition. I find it interesting that Joe Biden, uh, during his awful debate performance, it was revealed by Hunter Biden that he was on Ambien. I mean, I don't know how a president can show up for a debate, on Ambien. I think that to me is scary. It seems to me like Americans have to stop sending elderly people to office. But I also believe that Americans need young politicians who aren't extreme. I mean, it seems like we had um, there are like a lot of extremists in the Republican Party who are young, and in the Democratic Party. Like I would characterize AOC, the Squad, Zorhan Mandani, the new socialist in Minneapolis. I would describe them all as being extremists, and the Republicans aren't immune to that problem. Also, a lot of young Republicans like Laura Loomer, um, the one from Colorado. There are a lot of them. They're just they're way too MAGA. I don't like the extreme, MAGA people because I think that they have no real agenda. Um, there's off the top of my head, I can't remember their names, but there's that nut from uh, Georgia. The late. I'm not. I can't remember her name, but yeah, there's a lot of people want there to be term limits, based or age limits for placed on politicians. The case for age limits can actually be borne out in the case of Dianne Feinstein. I mean, Dianne Feinstein, I think, ruined her career by staying in the Senate for too long. I mean, she was like a shriveled up raisin in a wheelchair and serving as the senator of California. I mean, why is it that in the state of California they needed to have, an elderly uh, person who was more qualified for an old age home than serving in the Senate? They say Mitch McConnell's too old. I believe that both political parties are holding on to their elders because they understand that the up and coming crowd are too extreme. And that's unfortunate. We need there has to be a center in politics. Whatever happened to people like Joe Lieberman, George Pataki, Christine Whitman? I mean, it seems to me like the Republican Party got hijacked by talk radio hosts like Glenn Beck and Rush Limbaugh, and that the Democrats got hijacked by a bunch of communists. um, yeah, and I'm still trying to remember the congresswoman from Georgia. I forgot her name, but yeah, she's pretty extreme. It's and I mean, I think that people like Zorhan Mandani are definitely the main reason why I'm not a Democrat. I don't believe in rent control and high minimum wages. I think that when people demand that landlords provide tenants with a free rent, they're making a ridiculous demand. I mean, there's no reason why if I invest in an apartment building in Los Angeles, there's no reason why I shouldn't be able to profit off of my investment. And rent control does not help stay, keep the price down. Uh, it basically causes all types of problems, like the minimum wage. If you raise it to $25 an hour, all of the people will be replaced with robots. Um, but I think it is to be expected that you are going to get socialists in New York City. I saw When I was looking up costs of housing in New York City, I saw that an apartment with stabilized rent cost $3,000 a month. I mean, who could afford that? I mean, if you could afford $3,000 a month to live in an apartment, then you don't need rent stabilization. You're obviously rich. You could get a job uh, in Long Island, and not have to force your landlord to give you a freebie. I mean, I certainly can't afford 4 grand a month in rent. So I'm not sure what effect rent stabilization has. I've seen some statistics that landlords in New York City are going bankrupt. In New York City, they say like everybody's a millionaire. Like in order to have a house in like Coney Island, you have to be very rich. I mean, even if the house isn't technically like a mansion. So it's easy to see why, the majority of New Yorkers want free groceries, free, transportation, and a free house because they're living in the wrong area. They should move upstate and get a job in a warehouse. There's plenty of jobs in upstate New York for people in New York City to do without having rent control. What else don't I like about the socialists, the democratic socialist movement? I don't think that grocery stores should provide people with free stuff. I think that grocery workers work very hard and should be compensated with extra time off and higher and wages that come in the form of bonuses based on productivity. I believe that for the government to make claims about price gouging in um, grocery stores, for me, that's like a fraudulent claim. I see no evidence that grocery stores are charging excessive prices for the goods on the shelf. I think, if anything, they're discounting them too much. Um, yeah, so the politics of America has become more extreme. I grew up watching shows like Hannity and Combs and The O'Reilly Factor, and it seems like both political parties have went to extremes. I think that the social media causes that problem. The social media does tend to, elevate, either MAGA people or democratic socialists. I think that social media enables demagogues to get on the ticket. A demagogue will always have the biggest audience because they say things that are outrageous. They tend to propagate conspiracy theories about society being controlled by an elite group of people. They never tend to adopt a capitalist framework. And I predict that as AI replaces jobs, there's going to be a crisis in America. People are going to be angry when they learn that, IBM and Cisco laid off, 30% of their human resource department. Um, I'm not sure why you need to have a big human resource department anyway. I don't get it. But yeah, there are going to be fewer white collar jobs. But I think the flip side to that coin is that people who work in HR at Apple can easily start a small firm uh, by themselves. They could do network marketing. They could sell insurance. They could probably. I mean, if you're working in the human resource department at Cisco Systems, I'm sure you would be great at you know being a realtor or an investment seller at Morgan Stanley. So it doesn't really bother me if 20% of the human resource departments get laid off because of A chatbot. Okay, I forgot that there's another issue that I want to talk about, and it's the Coldplay adultery scandal. So a worker recently lost his job, a CEO lost his job because Chris Martin highlighted the fact that he was cheating at a concert. I think that's ridiculous. I believe the government should pass laws allowing employees to have affairs with whomever they want without consequences. There is no reason why the CEO needed to lose his job because of an affair. That for me is totally ridiculous. Having an affair with your I believe that having an affair with a coworker does not prevent you from doing your job. It's not a distraction. People have romantic lives, and no corporation, no corporation, in my opinion, should be able to ban people from dating. I think that we need politicians who pass a right to date act. I believe that um, the civil rights of the CEO in question were trampled over by a society that doesn't respect privacy. I don't believe that any social media accounts you have should, be able to get you fired. I don't believe that um, for anything except threatening violence. I don't. I mean, obviously, if somebody uses a social media account to, you know, make threats, they should be arrested. But you should not get fired from social media. You should not get fired from your job as a manager, because like I do, you had the audacity to go on social media and make, a bunch of, inflammatory statements that are designed to, make people angry. No, I'm not AI. I take that as a compliment. I'm real. I'm not a robot. And I'm trying to, find a cause to represent. I think I'm going to run for office, and I'm going to use the CEO firing as, a issue. I believe that, yeah, I'm going to state that Congress must pass a law banning the firing of workers based on discovered extramarital affairs or social media posts. Um, and it's going to be a controversial law because I don't think that there's any reason why you should be expelled from school, because of social media, as I've seen happen. I don't believe that, CEOs should be fired for having an affair. I don't think that it should be legal to prevent workers from having an affair. We don't know why the CEO had an affair because we're not privy to the details of his marriage. He may have had a legitimate reason to have an affair. There was no legitimate reason to fire him. We have to look at civil rights as things that apply to everybody. Yeah, firing someone for having an affair is, in my opinion, no different than firing for an interracial marriage. People have romantic interests, and they should be able to pursue their romantic interests at work if they wish to. Now, what I'm against, however, is sexual harassment. I think that, if the CEO SHs somebody, he should certainly lose his job for that. I mean, I don't, I'm intolerant of, sexual harassment. I think that the Me Too movement is legitimate. I'm very supportive of that. What I don't believe in is, however, I don't believe in firing people for committing adultery. I think that that's insane. Yeah, as I say, we don't know why they both cheated. Perhaps they were unhappy in their marriage and their spouses. Well, I don't want to speculate on it, but we just don't know. I don't want to blame their spouses for their adultery, but we just don't know why they cheated. And, in my opinion, laws need to be passed at the federal level that protect adultery. I believe. I mean, I'm not pro or anti adultery. But I definitely think that, people need the need for a romantic life is something everybody has. And I think that if, like, let's say I'm running my company, Drone Thrust, and, I have an affair with my secretary, that there's no reason why I should be fired. That doesn't, I mean, having an affair with someone who works under me, might be, um, it I see no reason why I should get fired. I think that if companies let workers have affairs, however, you're going to see an uptick in Me Too lawsuits. Obviously, like if you look at the Justin Baldoni lawsuit, you're going to see that the loose environment on Hollywood sets certainly did cause Justin Baldoni to SH Blake Lively. He admitted to that in the lawsuit in an audio recording. I mean, I'm not uncomfortable with accusing Baldoni of sexual harassment since he admitted to it in an audio that's already been seen. But, however, I do think that it should be illegal for companies to fire a CEO because they committed adultery. I don't think colleges should be able to do it either. I mean, I've heard stories of, professors getting fired because the college doesn't like what they post on the internet. I think that's completely ridiculous. And that, a college should only be able to fire a professor, for, as I say, violent, and threatening violence or SH. I think that there has got to be limits, placed by the federal government onto private companies about what you can get fired for. I think too many students get expelled from college for manufactured claims of hate speech. Like, I don't think Kyle Rittenhouse should have been prevented from going to college. I don't think Nicholas Sandman, if that's his correct name, should have been prevented from going to a Catholic college because he wore the MAGA hat in front of the Native American. I think that the government has got to protect speech. We live in an age where it's too easy to try to, get someone fired from a job because of something that they posted on social media. As I say, the only thing that should be fireable is threats of violence. Yeah, I mean, if a terrorist is going to call in a threat, then yeah, absolutely, that worker should be dismissed. But I am very much against employers from have. I'm against letting employers fire you for either social media posts, or having an affair with your coworkers. I really, it amazes me that we live in the year 2025 and we're seeing on Twitter that a CEO is getting fired for a consensual affair. The CEO is worth like $20 million, so he must be talented at his job. The human resource employee was standing next to the two, so obviously some people in the company knew that an affair was going on. Um, well, cheating destroys lives. I mean, every case is different. I'm not advocating that people cheat. I mean, but I could not imagine, being, in a relationship with, a wife that, I'm no longer. Well, I mean, you have to ask, why do people cheat? I mean, hopefully, I wouldn't feel the need to cheat on my wife, but I wouldn't rule it out. One reason why I might cheat on my wife is that maybe the terms of the marriage changed. Um, sometimes like a marriage falls apart, and there could be legitimate reasons for cheating. Um, So yeah, there are rumors that the CEO was a terrible boss, but there are lots of terrible bosses. I mean, if you fire uh, I think that all bosses have to be terrible. I mean, like as I say, I own the domain name for a website, Drone Thrust. I mean, if I turned Drone Thrust into like a major company, I'm sure that my employees would I'm sure some of my employees would see me as a dictator and would hate me. But just because you have two employees that don't like the way I bossed them around as a CEO doesn't mean I'm a bad person. And yeah, there were rumors with the CEO that he was too much of a dictator. You know, I never worked under him. But however, the funny thing is, like, I don't feel sorry for him because he's very rich. He has $20 million. The woman he was cheating with is was married to, someone who has a lot of money. So I'm not saying you should necessarily feel sorry for the cheating couple, but you should be outraged that they were fired for committing adultery. I mean, the Bible says, "Let ye who is without sin cast the first stone." I mean, why is it that people believe that it's okay to be so judgmental? Um, yeah, I mean, cheating can destroy lives. I mean, obviously, if you're addicted to cheating on your wife, then it's problematic and dangerous. I mean, it could cause the spread of diseases. I'm not advocating it, but again, I want to get back to this point. It's not for us. People should not be willing to cast judgment on the CEO. People shouldn't judge the CEO because we don't know why he cheated. We don't know the state of his marriage. There's many reasons that could explain um, why he cheated. It might not have fully been his fault. Um, yeah, and the funny thing is, like a lot of times with rich people, they're in an open relationship. If you, I remember once Oprah Winfrey did a special about swingers. Back in the 1990s, Oprah had a bunch of swingers on her show. They were all like white collar workers. Um, so you're going to find that amongst the rich and powerful, cheating is very common. My problem, yeah, as I say, as long as the cheating is consensual, I have no problem with it. I believe that people should have control over their romantic lives. It's not for. I mean, I don't understand why Ben Shapiro was shaming the couple. He stated that they were parading their affair out in the open when in fact they weren't. They missed. They apparently didn't. Well, they obviously they should not have been at the concert, but I don't know that they were parading the affair yeah, out in open. I mean, I think Ben Shapiro should embrace a philosophical position that allows for personal freedoms. I mean, it seems like a lot of people within the Republican Party are just slut shamers. I mean, my question for Ben Shapiro is, do you think we should have a slut shaming society? Should what the problem with societies that look down on adultery is hypocrisy. I think adultery is something that a lot of people commit. Um, People who criticize others for committing adultery might be too defensive. I mean, I've never cheated on someone. I mean, I'm not saying that it's something that I would routinely do. My point is that I do not believe that cheating on somebody should cause you to lose your job. I think it's legal to cheat. And I think the government needs to pass laws that prevent firing workers because the company found out that they were having an affair with an employee, a fellow employee, even if they work over them. I see absolutely no legal reason why companies should have the ability to fire people for cheating. The company said that he didn't represent their values. Why is staying faithful, staying monogamous to your partner a value? I mean, does astronomer.co believe? I mean, are they putting into their mission statement that they want to encourage monogamy? I think that is a silly thing to have as part of your corporate mission statement. I'm shocked that a tech company in the year 2025 would uh, actually fire an employee for a consensual affair. I mean, we live in the age of pride. You're supposed to be proud of every aspect of your romantic life. But here we see that in the state of, I think, New York, we're in the liberal state of New York, we're seeing a CEO, get fired for committing, adultery, and I think it's absolutely ridiculous. I think people, I'm not encouraging adultery. I think corporations probably should discourage their bosses from having affairs with people who work under them just to prevent the issue of SH. But ultimately, I do not believe that having an affair with someone who works under you should be a reason for termination. Uh, I think that the federal government should pass a law protecting workers from getting fired for adultery. And that concludes my message today. Thank you for your viewership.